The African night stretched out under a blanket of stars, a tranquil beauty masking the harsh reality of the bush. In February 2018, a trio of men embarked on a dangerous mission that would forever alter their lives. Among them was David Beloyi, a man driven by desperation, hope, and the cruel hand of poverty. Their destination was the Sibuya Game Reserve, nestled near the infamous Kruger National Park in South Africa. Their intent? To hunt the majestic wildlife that roamed the land, a perilous gamble for a chance at a better life. David's home in Mavuza, Mozambique, was a village defined by scarcity. Subsistence farming was the backbone of survival, and most families lived without electricity, their days dictated by the sun's rise and fall. The allure of poaching was strong, an illegal trade that promised quick riches in a world where opportunities were few. Rhino horns, elephant tusks, and other wildlife products fetched staggering prices on the black market, especially in countries like China. For David and his companions, the risk seemed worth the reward. The trio moved with practiced stealth, navigating the dense foliage and uneven terrain of the game reserve. Armed with hunting rifles and butchery tools, they were prepared for a night of careful stalking and calculated risks. They knew the dangers. Rangers patrolled these lands, some authorized to shoot poachers on sight. Yet their focus was on the potential bounty, the promise of wealth that could change their families' lives. As the hours passed, the men found themselves deep within the reserve. They were acutely aware of their surroundings, the nocturnal symphony of the bush filling their ears. But amidst the cacophony of crickets and rustling leaves, a shadow moved, a presence they hadn't anticipated. Unbeknownst to them, they had wandered into the territory of a lion pride. The first sign of danger came as a low growl, barely audible, but enough to send a chill down their spines. Before they could react, a lioness emerged from the darkness, her golden eyes fixed on the intruders. Panic set in as the men realized the grave error they had made. David raised his rifle, but the lioness was faster. With a powerful leap, she closed the distance, her jaws locking onto David's leg. His scream pierced the night, a sound that would haunt his companions forever. Chaos erupted as the other two men scrambled to escape. One dropped his weapon in his haste, the clatter lost in the frenzy of growls and cries. They ran blindly, hearts pounding, as David's struggle with the lioness grew increasingly desperate. He fought with every ounce of strength, but the predator's sheer power was overwhelming. The lioness dragged him further into the bush, her claws and teeth unrelenting. The remaining poachers didn't stop until they were far from the scene, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Fear had overtaken any sense of loyalty or bravery. They didn't look back, leaving David to face the pride alone. It was an unspoken understanding among poachers, each man for himself, when the wild turned against them. By the time the reserve's rangers arrived, drawn by the sound of gunfire, the scene was one of grim finality. David's remains were a sobering testament to the brutal laws of nature. Only his head was identifiable. The rest had been consumed by the lions. The rangers could do little but document the aftermath, their somber expressions reflecting the weight of their work. In the following days, an investigation pieced together the events of that fateful night. The evidence left behind, rifles, ammunition, and tools, painted a clear picture of the poachers' intentions. Yet, the community in Mavuza remained silent, unwilling or unable to shed light on David's motivations. His death was a stark reminder of the desperation that drove men like him to risk everything for a chance at a better life. The story of David Beloyi resonated far beyond the borders of the reserve. It highlighted the complex interplay between poverty, wildlife conservation, and the harsh realities of life in rural Africa. Poaching was not just a crime. It was a symptom of deeper issues, a desperate act born from a lack of alternatives. For the lions, it was a matter of survival. For David, it was a gamble that ended in tragedy. The incident also reignited debates about the ethics and effectiveness of anti-poaching measures. While some argued for stricter enforcement and harsher penalties, others called for addressing the root causes: poverty, lack of education, and limited economic opportunities. Conservationists emphasize the importance of protecting endangered species, but they also recognize the need for compassion and understanding in tackling the human side of the equation. David's story is a haunting reminder of the fragile balance between humans and nature. In the wild, the line between predator and prey is thin, often dictated by circumstance rather than intent. David Beloyi's tragic end serves as a poignant reminder of the risks and consequences faced by those who dare to challenge the wilderness. Theo had been a handler at a wildlife park in South Africa for many years. During his tenure, he formed a special bond with a lion named Junior, whom he had raised from a cub. Junior was born alongside two siblings, but sadly, they both succumbed to a disease, leaving him as the sole survivor. The wildlife park's management assigned Theo the task of raising the cub, and although it wasn't an easy job, Theo cherished every moment with Junior. Junior was playful, energetic, and sometimes a handful, but he was also affectionate and loving. This unique bond made Junior stand out among the park's animals. Visitors, both locals and tourists, flocked to the park to witness the remarkable relationship between Theo and Junior. Their story was even featured in local newspapers, and journalists and personalities came to meet them. Junior would greet visitors with a cheerful attitude and entertain them by performing simple tricks he had learned. By the time Junior turned 4, he had become obedient and capable of more impressive tricks, further astounding the visitors. However, tragedy struck when Junior was 6 years old. During a feeding session, he attacked Theo, severely injuring his arm. Theo was rushed to the hospital, where he spent months undergoing treatment. Meanwhile, Junior was moved to a more secluded enclosure to ensure the safety of others. The news of Junior attacking Theo and being relocated spread quickly, causing a decline in the park's visitors. Despite his injury, Theo couldn't stay away from Junior. Once fully recovered, he insisted on visiting the lion he had raised. Fearing for Theo's safety, a guard accompanied him with a rifle just in case Junior didn't recognize him. As Theo entered Junior's enclosure, he took a deep breath, nervous about what might happen. To his relief and delight, Junior ran toward him and snuggled affectionately, showing that he still recognized his beloved handler. They spent some time playing and reconnecting, much to Theo's joy. However, as Theo was about to leave the enclosure, something terrifying occurred. Junior suddenly ran and pounced on Theo from behind, knocking him to the ground. At first, Theo tried to push the lion away, but his actions seemed to agitate Junior, who roared and began pawing at Theo aggressively. In a shocking turn, Junior bit Theo on the head, causing him to scream in pain. The guard accompanying Theo called for backup while aiming his rifle at Junior. hesitant to take the shot due to the bond between Theo and the lion. Theo, in excruciating pain, begged the guard to put Junior down. With other handlers arriving and witnessing the horrifying scene, the guard made the heartbreaking decision to save Theo. A gunshot echoed through the enclosure, and Junior collapsed lifelessly on top of Theo. The handlers rushed to carry Theo out of the enclosure and transport him to the hospital. Despite the trauma and severe injuries, Theo miraculously survived. However, the emotional pain of losing Junior, his beloved companion, was unbearable. Theo spent months recovering in the hospital, haunted by the memory of the attack and the loss of the lion he had raised from a cub. Junior, who had once been a symbol of love and trust, was gone forever, leaving a void in Theo's heart that could never be filled. This tragic tale is a poignant reminder of the unpredictable nature of wild animals, even those raised in captivity. In December 2018, a tragedy unfolded at the Conservator Center in Burlington, North Carolina, that would leave the animal conservation community reeling and spark widespread reflection on the inherent dangers of working with wild animals. Alexandra Black, a 22-year-old intern filled with enthusiasm and dreams, lost her life in a horrifying encounter with a lion named Mai. This story, though heartbreaking, is a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife and the profound risks that come with caring for them. Alexandra Black was a young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She had recently graduated from Indiana University, Bloomington, where she pursued a degree in zoology with a focus on animal behavior. Her passion for animals and her determination to contribute to conservation efforts were evident to all who knew her. Alexandra had already completed 3 internships at various wildlife sanctuaries across the United States, gaining valuable hands-on experience. These experiences deepened her resolve to make a difference in the lives of animals. When she arrived at the Conservator Center for her 4th internship, she was full of hope and excitement about the opportunity to work closely with big cats, creatures she had admired since childhood. The Conservator Center, located in a quiet corner of North Carolina, was established in 1999 as a sanctuary for exotic animals rescued from abusive or neglectful situations. Over the years, it had become home to a variety of big cats, including lions, tigers, and leopards, as well as other species. The center prided itself on its commitment to providing a safe and enriching environment for these animals, many of whom had suffered greatly before finding refuge there. It also served as an educational facility, attracting thousands of visitors annually who came to learn about the animals and the importance of conservation. For Alexandra, the center represented an ideal place to grow her skills and further her understanding of wildlife care. December 30th, 2018, marked Alexandra's 10th day at the Conservator Center. She had quickly impressed her colleagues with her dedication and eagerness to learn. That morning, she joined a routine cleaning operation in one of the lion enclosures, under the supervision of more experienced staff members. The task was familiar and seemingly straightforward, but as fate would have it, a small, seemingly insignificant detail would lead to a catastrophic turn of events. As Alexandra and her co-workers prepared the enclosure for cleaning, a large play ball, commonly used to enrich the lion's environment, rolled into the path of the gate. The ball prevented the gate from closing securely, a detail that went unnoticed amidst the routine activity. Inside the enclosure was Mai, a 14-year-old male lion known for his powerful presence and majestic demeanor. Mai had lived at the center for years and was considered one of its most striking residents. As the gate remained slightly ajar, Mai's natural curiosity and strength came into play. He nudged the gate open, slipping out of the holding area. The moment he breached the gate, the situation escalated rapidly. Mai's primal instincts, honed over millennia of evolution, took over, transforming the majestic creature into a force of nature that was impossible to control. Alexandra was the closest to the lion when he escaped. As Mai lunged toward her, she had little time to react. Her colleagues shouted in panic, trying to distract the lion and draw his attention away, but Mai's focus was fixed on Alexandra. He grabbed her by the ankle and began dragging her toward the enclosure's interior. Despite her fear, Alexandra fought back with remarkable courage, using her hands and whatever tools she could reach to fend off the massive predator. Her colleagues continued their desperate attempts to intervene, using loud noises and other tactics to try to lure Mai away, but their efforts were in vain. The attack was swift and brutal. Mai's immense strength and predatory instincts left Alexandra with little chance of escape. He clamped down on her neck with his powerful jaws, causing catastrophic injuries. The struggle lasted only minutes, but it felt like an eternity to those who witnessed it. By the time Mai released Alexandra, she was gravely injured, lying motionless on the ground. Her colleagues immediately called for emergency services, their voices trembling with urgency as they described the situation. The scene was chaotic, with Mai pacing the enclosure, his primal energy still palpable. When authorities arrived at the Conservator Center, they were met with a harrowing scene. The officers, armed with shotguns and tranquilizers, assessed the situation and quickly realized the gravity of what had occurred. Despite their best efforts to subdue Mai using tranquilizers, the drugs failed to take effect in time. Faced with the pressing need to ensure the safety of everyone present, the sheriff's department made the difficult decision to euthanize the lion. The sound of the gunshot marked the tragic end of Mai's life, a moment that left everyone present shaken and grief-stricken. Paramedics rushed to Alexandra's side, but her injuries were too severe. She was pronounced dead shortly after the attack, leaving her family, friends, and colleagues devastated. News of the incident spread quickly, making headlines across the country. The tragic loss of a young woman with so much promise and passion for animal conservation struck a chord with people far and wide. Vigils were held in her memory, and tributes poured in from those who had known her and those who had been inspired by her story. In the aftermath of the attack, the Conservator Center came under intense scrutiny. Investigators from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and other regulatory agencies examined the facility's safety protocols and operational procedures. It was revealed that the center had passed its most recent inspection in April 2018 without any noted violations. The incident was ultimately deemed a tragic accident rather than the result of negligence or misconduct. However, the findings did little to assuage the grief and anger felt by Alexandra's loved ones and the broader community. Alexandra's family, in their grief, spoke of her unwavering dedication to animals and her dream of making a positive impact in the world of conservation. They described her as a vibrant, compassionate, and driven young woman whose love for wildlife had been a defining part of her identity. Her friends and colleagues echoed these sentiments, remembering her as someone who brought energy and enthusiasm to every task she undertook. Alexandra's death was a profound loss, not only for those who knew her personally, but also for the conservation community as a whole. The tragedy also reignited debates about the ethical and practical challenges of keeping wild animals in captivity. Advocates for animal welfare questioned whether sanctuaries, even those with the best intentions, could ever fully eliminate the risks associated with housing and caring for powerful predators. Others pointed to the importance of sanctuaries in providing refuge for animals that could not survive in the wild due to their past experiences. The complex and often polarizing nature of these discussions underscored the broader implications of Alexandra's story. In the years since Alexandra's passing, her legacy has lived on through various initiatives and tributes. Scholarships have been established in her name to support aspiring zoologists and conservationists. Her story has been shared widely, serving as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration to those who share her passion for wildlife. For many, Alexandra represents the courage and dedication required to pursue a career in animal care, as well as the importance of continuing to strive for safer and more effective ways to coexist with the natural world. The events of December 30th, 2018 remain a painful memory for those who were there that day. The loss of Alexandra Black and Mai, two beings whose lives were tragically intertwined in those final moments, serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between humans and the wild. As the world continues to grapple with the challenges of conservation and wildlife management, Alexandra's story reminds us of the profound respect and caution required when working with the powerful and unpredictable creatures that share our planet. Imagine venturing into the heart of South Africa, a land where nature reigns supreme, to witness the beauty of wildlife up close. This was the dream of Katherine Chappell, a special effects editor celebrated for her work on iconic films like Game of Thrones, Captain America, and Godzilla. Her passion for wildlife wasn't just a fleeting interest. It was a mission that drove her to explore some of the most remote and breathtaking corners of the world. But for Katherine, what began as an extraordinary journey turned into a chilling nightmare. In June 2015, her love for nature brought her face to face with one of Africa's most formidable predators, a meeting that would have tragic consequences. Katherine wasn't like most tourists. She was deeply committed to conservation and the preservation of wildlife. Her efforts extended beyond admiration. She actively worked to make a difference. She raised funds for Wildlife Act, an organization dedicated to saving endangered species, through a GoFundMe campaign. Her work included tracking animals in the wild, aiding in anti-poaching efforts, and assisting veterinarians with the relocation of wildlife. For Katherine, this was more than a vacation. It was a calling. With her heart set on contributing to these noble efforts, she flew from her home in Canada to Johannesburg, South Africa, ready to immerse herself in the world of conservation. One of the highlights of her trip was a planned visit to Lion Park, a renowned tourist destination just outside Johannesburg. The park, home to over 85 lions, offered visitors the opportunity to witness these majestic creatures in their natural habitat. Spanning a massive 20-acre enclosure, the park was a haven for wildlife enthusiasts and had even hosted celebrities like John Legend and Shakira. However, Lion Park also had strict safety guidelines, constantly reminding visitors to remain in their vehicles with windows closed. These warnings were no mere formality. They were meant to protect visitors from the unpredictable and deadly instincts of the park's inhabitants. As Katherine entered the park with her guide, Pierre Poer, the atmosphere was electric with excitement. The sprawling landscape was dotted with golden lions basking under the African sun. It was everything she had imagined and more, but amidst the beauty and serenity, an opportunity presented itself that Katherine couldn't resist. Spotting a lioness resting close to the vehicle, Katherine was drawn to the scene. She wanted to capture the perfect shot, to freeze that moment of raw, untamed beauty forever. Despite repeated warnings plastered around the park, she made a critical decision. She rolled down her window. At first glance, the lioness appeared calm, almost disinterested. Katherine, focused entirely on her camera, adjusted her lens to capture the animal in stunning detail. She didn't notice the subtle shift in the lioness's posture or the way its eyes locked onto her. Unbeknownst to Katherine, the predator had been watching her every move. Slowly, deliberately, the lioness began to approach the vehicle. Other tourists, alarmed by the unfolding danger, honked their horns in a desperate attempt to alert her. But Katherine, lost in the moment, paid no attention. Then, in a heartbeat, the lioness struck. The attack was as swift as it was brutal. The lioness leapt onto the vehicle, her massive paws gripping the side as her jaws clamped down on Katherine's shoulder and neck. The once serene atmosphere of Lion Park erupted into chaos. Katherine's screams pierced the air, and Pierre, seated next to her, was jolted into action. He lunged forward, trying desperately to push the lioness away, but the animal's strength was overwhelming. Blood began to pour from Katherine's wounds, staining the inside of the vehicle and leaving her in unimaginable pain. The lioness's instincts had taken over, and there was no stopping her. Katherine, still in shock, struggled to fend off the attack as Pierre continued his attempts to free her. Witnesses, helpless to intervene, could only watch in horror. Some frantically honked their car horns, while others shouted in vain, hoping to distract the animal. But the lioness was relentless. The seconds dragged on, each one more agonizing than the last. Despite Pierre's valiant efforts, the situation was spiraling out of control. The lioness's grip tightened, and Katherine's injuries worsened. Blood loss was becoming critical, and her cries began to weaken. Pierre, overcome with fear and adrenaline, managed to shove the lioness back momentarily. But the damage had already been done. Katherine slumped in her seat, her body battered and broken. An emergency call was made, and park staff scrambled to respond. But precious moments had already been lost. When the ambulance finally arrived, paramedics worked furiously to stabilize Katherine. They applied pressure to her wounds, trying to stem the bleeding, but the injuries were too severe. Despite their best efforts, Katherine succumbed to her injuries. The lioness, unaware of the devastation she had caused, retreated into the enclosure, her wild instincts satisfied. Katherine's death sent shockwaves through the conservation community and beyond. Her loved ones, devastated by the loss, struggled to comprehend the tragic end to her journey. To those who knew her, Katherine was fearless, a woman who had devoted her life to protecting the very creatures that had now claimed it. Her sister described her as passionate and driven, while her boyfriend, who had cautioned her about the dangers of her travels, was left grappling with guilt and heartbreak. The aftermath of the attack raised pressing questions about the safety protocols at Lion Park. Witnesses claim that the vehicle's windows may have been open when they entered the enclosure, a violation of the park's strict rules, while Pierre defended his actions, stating that Katherine had been lulled into a false sense of security. Others pointed to a pattern of tourists ignoring warnings. Lion Park had long been a hotspot for up-close wildlife experiences, but its allure also came with undeniable risks. Adding to the tragedy, Pierre, who had done everything in his power to save Katherine, suffered a heart attack shortly after the incident. The emotional and physical toll of the attack was unbearable, and he was rushed to the hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, the lioness that had attacked Katherine was spared euthanasia. Park officials determined that she had been in estrus, a hormonal state that heightened her territorial instincts and aggression. Despite the global attention the case received, the behavior of visitors at Lion Park remained troubling. Even after Katherine's death, many continued to ignore the rules, rolling down their windows and treating the wild animals as mere attractions. It was a stark reminder of the human tendency to underestimate the power and unpredictability of nature, even in the face of tragedy. Katherine Chappell's story remains a haunting reminder of the delicate balance between human curiosity and the untamed instincts of wildlife. Her passion for conservation and her fearless spirit were undeniable, yet her tragic death underscores the importance of respecting nature's boundaries. The wild is not a playground, and even the most seemingly docile creatures can act on primal instincts in ways that humans cannot predict or control.